Previously on Shadowed Longings, I met John in his brother's living room. After takeout, we sat on the living room floor across from each other. We continued our conversation, ever deepening. "I don't think I've ever talked this much," he said quietly, "or shared what I have with you with another guy." Without thinking, I moved closer to him. He leaned into me. I took his hand, leading him down the hall, letting our bodies meet without explanation or apology, letting desire have its way with us.
This week on Shadowed Longings, the year I tried not to be gay, and the men I couldn't forget.
Before I tried, one last time, to stop wanting men, there was John, the man I couldn't quite leave behind. Even now, I can hear John's quiet, honest voice. I've always wanted it. But honestly, I have never really felt physically or emotionally close to another man the way I have with you. Years after meeting John, this late-night confession still rang true and unshakable. I felt drawn to him still 13 years later. There was so much unfinished, so many desires and conflict that needed resolution. And so, at 39, I built a 12-month spiritual experiment around silence, sacrifice, and the hope that God might finally quiet my desires for men the way that memory had not. I was living in New Jersey on the campus where I worked, carrying a respectable title, a disciplined exterior, and more unfinished longing than I knew what to do with. My life looked orderly enough from the outside: religious work, adult responsibilities, a carefully managed sense of purpose. But beneath that surface, in the midst of my year-long monk-like covenant, memories of the men I loved had begun to stir. John was one of them. So was his brother Josh. They came back to me in the quiet, not only as memories but as moods, and somehow maybe even as possibilities, as unfinished scenes calling to be completed, as the kind of almost that linger in the body long after the mind has tried to put them away. What I had once told myself was over no longer felt entirely over, not in silence, not with a journal open, my life stripped of its usual distractions. The quiet had its own intentions. Instead of burying desire, it returned it to me, bringing back the men, the roads not taken, the versions of myself I left behind with them. And with all of that came an unsettling thought that some part of my life might not be finished after all. So I made a covenant for 1 year to find greater resolution, deeper peace, once and for all. I would not cut my hair. I would not watch television. I would strip my life down to prayer, journaling, silence, and whatever voice remained when distraction was taken away. In some ways, it sounded noble. In others, mildly unhinged. But desperation has always had a way of dressing itself up in spiritual language. I told myself I wanted clarity. That much was true. I wanted direction. Peace. A cleaner signal above the noise. I wanted to know what to do with the life I had built, and the life that kept pressing against it from underneath. At its starkest, this was my last serious attempt not to be gay. But even that is too simple. By then, my 39th year of covenant had become something more intimate and more dangerous, a season of listening closely to desires that had outlived every effort to silence them, and of asking whether the life I had spent decades trying to build could still hold. The setting suited the drama. The campus where I lived and worked was an old religious community. Stone buildings, quiet lawns, ceremonial rhythms, enough sacred architecture to make even a private crisis feel liturgical. It was the kind of place where vows seemed plausible, the kind of place where a man could mistake restraint for peace and silence for certainty. By then, I had spent decades trying to discipline, outpray, outlast, or otherwise spiritualize my desire for men into submission. Therapy, prayer, fasting, Bible reading, ex-gay conferences, accountability, celibacy, books with earnest titles and impossible promises. I had given my heart to every sanctioned strategy I knew and still found myself drawn toward other men, not only physically, but emotionally, romantically, imaginatively, in every way that mattered. Desire was no longer abstract by then. It had faces, voices, bodies, and it had, among other things, the shape of John. Colorado had happened 13 years earlier. I can still feel that morning after in my body. I was on the couch. John was below me on the floor in a sleeping bag. We had talked long into the night, the way people do when something is happening that neither of them has a good name for yet. It had been only 48 hours, and somehow that made it worse. Too short to call history. Too charged to dismiss as coincidence. He and his brother Josh had welcomed me into their world in Colorado during a break from seminary, and somewhere in that brief span of time, something in me had changed. Or perhaps not changed. Revealed. I remember lying there above John, not sleeping so much as ruminating through the night with dread sitting squarely on my chest. Morning was coming, and with it, my return to Kentucky, to seminary, to the life I had chosen, and the man I was trying very hard to be.
What you've just listened to is only the beginning. An excerpt from the 30-minute episode of the true slow burn story, Shadowed Longings. Chapter 1, Desires in Conflict. In this upcoming episode, I go deeper into the goodbye I couldn't forget, the road I almost reversed, and the spiritual experiment that became my last serious attempt to outrun desire. Stay tuned for the full first chapter and other upcoming episodes of Shadowed Longings, airing most Fridays.